everyone, and welcome to week 4. For those of you who hadn't noticed yet, I did post the final course schedule. The assignments are essentially the same, I just added titles and a little bit more details. Last week, the first thing you turned in was your final project proposal. I'll get you feedback on that throughout the week. I'll send it through Moodle, so keep your eye open for that. I tend to spend a fair amount of time providing you thorough feedback, so please be sure to take that into account and make those changes as you're working on your final project. You all did a great job on the 3 forums for this week. On the linguistic diversity forum, a lot of you suggested that the teachers simply correct children using dialects, so saying things like y'all. I think it's important to remember how a child might feel if a teacher just reprimanded them for that in front of the class. And there's some interesting new work on this topic that suggests that one of the best approaches for this is for teachers to explicitly talk to children about what kind of context it's okay to use dialects and when it's necessary to use standard English. This kind of promotes some metacognitive awareness about language. You also had some interesting points on the Your Baby Can Read forum that I liked. A lot of you suggested, though, that teachers back off and just kind of let kids learn to read on their own. I think there's an important balance. The tricky thing with reading is, unlike language, it's not a natural or innate skill. So if we just leave kids alone with a bunch of books, they're not necessarily automatically going to learn. Scaffolding, like Vygotsky proposes, is a great way to provide some support for students without being overbearing. Another thing that I've noticed this week and in the past few weeks is that people seem to be struggling with the tests. This week I added 2 points to Chapter 7, 3 points to Chapter 9, and 4 points to Chapter 10 because the scores just weren't where I wanted them, and there were a few questions that people consistently got wrong. One issue that I see is that everyone seems to be using the entire amount of time. So for the remaining tests for this semester, I've given you an extra 10 minutes in hopes that that'll help some of you. For a few tests this week, there were also people who did poorly because they skipped the short answer. Since that's worth the equivalent of 4 multiple choice questions, I'd strongly encourage you to do those questions first. Okay, so for this week, we're moving a little bit away from the directly educational material to focus on some of the other characteristics that can impact the classroom. First, we'll talk about emotional development. I've got a bunch of videos for you to watch on that, in addition to reading the chapter in the PowerPoint. Your discussion forum for that, I'd like you to think about the importance of emotion regulation and temperament in the classroom, and I've got a few questions to get you thinking about that. Although these things don't directly affect cognitive development, they still clearly play an important role in the classroom. If you've ever been in a classroom, you should be familiar with that. Chapter 12 has to do with the development of the self and also the development of our social understanding. I've got a few extra materials for you, and then your discussion forum, I'd like you to find, there's lots of programs online that are designed to improve children's social understanding and their perspective taking. I'd like you to find one of those programs, provide a link, discuss it a little bit, and kind of explain how this program relates to what you learned in your textbook and why this skill is important in the classroom. And this week we're just covering 2 chapters. However, I'd encourage you to be working on your final project since you have a little bit of a lighter load. That'll be due at the end of next week. As always, please ask me if you have any questions, and have a great week.